Yeah, very frustrating because we've been telling you about this story since Steve Irwin used a stolen excavator to try and dig up part of Dr. Jose Rizal Park. Since then, the city's been trying to work with him to get him either mental health treatment or get him into housing, but he seems determined to build a cabin in the park, and nothing, it seems, can stop him.
City of Seattle versus Stephen Michael Irwin.
Keeping Steve Irwin in custody seems to be the only way of keeping him out of Dr. Jose Rizal Park. He's back in court after yet another arrest for digging up the park.
He has used a stolen excavator to construct a cabin. He's been arrested again and again, and he will clearly not follow orders to stay out of the park.
This KOMO 4 drone video shows the area of the park where Irwin has now built 3 makeshift cabins since November. What you can't see from the air is this. Irwin dug into the hillside and cleared out trees in the park. He claims he's looking for gold, but prosecutors and police say he's damaging the park.
I was shocked that he was able to build something so quickly, so big.
Irwin has been arrested multiple times.
He has been banned from all parks, and he just continues to come back time after time.
In court today, Irwin's defense attorney said he was confused about being banned from a public park.
It's a public space. It's his understanding that he could go back there. There's just confusion about whether he was allowed to return there to stay or go back there at all.
But the city says Irwin has caused tens of thousands of dollars in damage in just the last few months since he was arrested here in a stolen excavator. Irwin is homeless and told KOMO News he believes he has a right to build a cabin in the park despite being told no.
There's outreach agencies trying to work with him. He's just continually refusing to accept shelter solutions and any kind of outreach that's offered. He keeps returning to the same location.
Irwin is accused of causing tens of thousands of dollars over the last several months to the park, but this case goes beyond that. When he's been arrested, police said he has had stolen credit cards on him. He's also been accused of theft. So there's sort of a lot of issues going on today in court. A judge kept his bail at $5,000, and the city says they're going to continue to work with him to try and come up with some sort of housing or shelter situation and try and keep him from just repeating the same cycle. We'll see if it works. Reporting live in Seattle, Jeremy Harris, KOMO News.
The man arrested for destroying a Seattle park finally appeared in court today. He's been arrested several times, but prosecutors say he continues to violate orders to stay out of that park. Now the city's concerned about the hillside where Irwin started digging with a stolen excavator. I talked with Jeremy Harris tonight about the help the city continues to offer. Well, Jeremy, thanks for being with us here on ARC Seattle tonight. So it sounds like the city really wants to get this guy some help, but he really just doesn't want to help himself, it sounds like.
Well, you're exactly right, Preston. The city's been working with their outreach teams to try and get Stephen Irwin a spot in a shelter, get him some sort of housing, get him out of the city park. But as you said, he has been resistant to all efforts of outreach, and that includes those offers of going into a shelter. He claims he wants to build a cabin in Dr. Jose Rizal Park. He says now at least the 4th time that he's been arrested because of this. And the prosecutor said in court today they feel like there's almost nothing that can be done to keep him from going back to the park.
So he was in court today. What exactly happened? I know they were talking about a $5,000 bond or something. Is that still sticking?
That's exactly right. So his bail was set at $5,000. He's currently being arrested on these charges from the city related to property destruction at the park. Police also said that he had some stolen credit cards on him. And that's on top of, Preston, the other charges that he's already facing in connection to this. So he's got a lot of court cases that are sort of stacking up here. But I think the point from the city is they don't necessarily want to criminally prosecute him. They would like to get him to stop tearing up the hillside at the park. And what we heard today in court from a police officer is that he has dug so far into the hillside that the city is worried about the stability of the hillside at Dr. Rizal Park. He's also been digging under the roots of trees. Now, I've known Stephen Irwin for months, and he's told me before that he thinks there is gold in the hills at Rizal Park. So he wanted to essentially mine the hillside to try and get gold out of it. Well, in doing that, the city says he's caused tens of thousands of dollars in damage to the park. And the frustrating thing here for prosecutors, police, the outreach teams, and everybody is that even when he's taken to jail, even when he's offered shelter, even when there's been efforts to intervene and get him to stop doing this, he simply refuses and ends up right back in the same spot.
So, Jeremy, have you talked with family members about this guy? Are they concerned about his mental well-being? I'm just curious.
Well, certainly they are. And I know his mother. I tracked her down when we were doing some of our original reporting on this case after the excavator incident. And she's talked to me and we've been in touch. But basically, his mom says that he grew up in Mississippi. He got into drugs. He became a danger to the family. So she kicked him out. They brought him back in the house a couple of times and then ultimately decided they couldn't have him there because he was creating too much of a danger. He ends up here in Seattle. He doesn't have much contact, if any, with his family back in Mississippi. And so there's some frustration there from the family. They're like, we want him to be safe, but he's not necessarily welcome to come back home. So he's up here in Seattle. He doesn't have really deep roots, but he's told me multiple times he's convinced he can build this cabin in the park. So that's what he's trying to do. Now, the city says, of course, you absolutely cannot build a cabin in our park, and you've got to stop doing this because you're destroying parts of this park. And it's going to get worse. He's taken down multiple trees. By my guess, at least 12 estimates, sometimes high as 20 to 30 trees have been taken out by this guy. So it's just a huge mess, and the city really doesn't have any other options here beyond putting him in jail every once in a while and hoping he doesn't go back to the park.
So I'm also just a little bit curious here as to what the reason is behind a bond. Doesn't sound like he has any money or any way to pay his way out of jail. They don't want to criminally prosecute him. So I guess I just don't understand the reason behind, setting a bond for this guy, considering they want to get him, I guess, professional help. But if he doesn't want the professional help, what do you do?
That's the key question, Preston, and that's why we're covering this case so much here, is because this is really an issue in Seattle with how do you help folks who may be resistant to going into some sort of shelter, who may have their own incentives for wanting to be out on the streets. He's not the only one. I've talked to another person who lives up in that park. He told me he's lived there for more than 10 years after he got out of prison, and he wants to stay there. And it's one thing, Preston, for folks who may want to go live off on their own in the wilderness or who may want to camp or something. But the allegations here against Stephen Irwin is that, he's stealing these things. He's been accused of theft. He has stolen credit cards on him. And so it's not just a person living in the park, it's destruction of the park. There's theft involved, there's stolen credit cards. I mean, this is being fueled at the expense of the people of the city of Seattle. So that's why the prosecutors and the police are involved. But in this case, Irwin just says, I want to do this. This is where I want to be. I want to be left alone. But leaving him alone is potentially putting people in danger at the park. And it's causing a lot of headaches for people who live there around Rizal Park, who say this situation is simply out of control. And as you mentioned on the bond issue, well, everybody's entitled to bail. And so you can't have a no bail scenario here. But looking at sort of some involuntary commitment option or something else to get him into treatment or to get him into some sort of mental health help, I don't know that that's on the table right now, but I'm sure it's something prosecutors are looking at.
All right. Well, it's interesting to watch this case develop. I know if they just release him from jail, it sounds to me like he's just going to go back out and do the same thing again.
Right.
You just can't let someone just go back out and commit criminal acts. I mean, you can't do that. I'm just curious and wondering if they can, at some point, put him in jail and commit him to some kind of treatment plan to where, yes, he's been doing these things and all these criminal actions, and jailing him and then getting him the mental help that he needs so he could potentially rehabilitate in some way. But at this point, I don't know much about his mental capacity or what those drugs did to him in the past, like his family members are telling you. But definitely a sad situation, no doubt. And I know there are a lot of people on the streets that are probably dealing with the same kind of situations as far as really needing that help and just not being able to get it and really not wanting to get it. They just want to live their lives. But definitely frustrating, Jeremy.
Very frustrating. And I think it's a situation that'll continue to be frustrating for the next little while.
All right, Jeremy, thanks for the update. Keep us posted on any new developments. And as always, we appreciate you being here on ARC Seattle with us tonight.
All right. Thanks for having me, Preston.